He has emergency surgery, and there's essentially nothing that they can do other than basically drain the blood from the penis, and there's just a ton of scar tissue. If someone says this guy's penis was destroyed, you will conjure up an image of the worst thing that you could imagine it is in your mind. I will do the same. We ended up, obviously, with a $412 million verdict.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another awesome episode of Cases Gone Wild, where we bring you some of the craziest, wildest, true legal cases from around the country with some of the top trial lawyers from around the country. We have a great guest for you today. He is a phenomenal trial lawyer. He's obtained over $1 billion for his clients. That's billion with a B. He is a total beast, and he's going to talk to you about some of the most wildest, craziest cases that you're not going to believe. Keith Bruno is here. You're going to hear from him in a minute. If you like the show, please share it with your friends. Give us thumbs up. Remember, we're filming, so you can watch us on our YouTube channel, or you can check out the podcast on our website at markolaw.com under the podcast little tab up at the top right corner. But without further ado, Keith, thanks for coming on the show. You're a great friend. You're a great trial lawyer, and it's awesome to have you on the show.
Thank you. I know I've listened, and so I know who the guests are, and you get really good guests. So I'm quite honored to be even considered among this rarefied air of trial lawyers that come on to chit chat with you about insane cases, which we all have.
Yeah, we all do, dude. Well, it's really good to have you on. I've gotten to know you over the years and been involved with Nick Rowley and his programs, and we've worked on brainstormed on cases together. You're such a great trial lawyer. You're going to be speaking at the conference that here in Detroit, the Michigan Trial Lawyers Summit. So if our listeners can come and see you live, if you're a lawyer, of course, a plaintiff's lawyer, at the conference, we're super pumped about that. Tell our listeners just a little bit about your background, Keith, because you have like such a great resume, and your claim to fame and your rise is so awesome. You were Orange County Public Defender of the Year. You did public defense work, which is amazing and admirable. And you're Trial Lawyer of the Year multiple times. So just tell us like a nutshell for those who don't know you.
Sure. Well, I'm glad you brought up the Michigan Trial Lawyers Summit because there's going to be amazing speakers there. And my origin story literally starts there. I was born in Beaumont Hospital, which to those that don't know is like it's the hospital that serves a lot of the suburban Detroit communities, or at least it did in the 70s. And I grew up there at least until I was 9, and then my family moved to Philadelphia. So my beginnings were there, and we're coming back to put on a great seminar where just like the response from these trial lawyers around the country has been amazing. It's going to be epic, and it's going to be one of those seminars that I attend when I'm not speaking. I'm going to all of the presentations so I can pick up nuggets because it's so important to do that if you have had or if you want as diverse of a career as I've had. I graduated from law school and thought I was going to be an entertainment lawyer because I thought that being an entertainment lawyer was like having lunches with Tom Cruise and, talking on the phone and just, kind of wheeling around LA. It's not.
Like Ari from Entourage.
Exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to do. And I got a job at CAA, but did not accept it. And so there were about 2 years where I did corporate law. And as much as I've always wanted to be a lawyer, I loved being a lawyer. This was just soul crushing. Couldn't do it. So then I put my application in at both the DA's office and the public defender. And I was like, whoever hires me, I'll go. Went to the public defender's office, loved it. love doing that work. I've tried 11 murder cases, including special circumstance murder cases, which are death penalty cases, and then kind of got burnt out on that. Your subject matter is drugs, sex, and violence, right? So it's for a young lawyer, it's really good, and it's also a good place to develop courtroom skills. It's like being an ER doctor in a major metropolitan area, working the overnight shift. Like, you're going to get a lot of hands-on medical experience. So from there, as I was kind of getting burnt out, as luck would have it, I got set up on a blind date with Nick Rowley, which wasn't really like a blind date. It was a blind case. We had a mutual friend that was like, you should try a case. Like, there's this criminal guy named Keith Bruno. There's this amazing civil lawyer, Nick Rowley. You want to get into civil. You guys should try a case together. And so Nick agreed. It was a like $2,000 in property damage rear end accident with a Guatemalan pizza delivery guy who was our client, Cesar Alescas. And I think he had some kind of like shoulder repair or something as a result of it. Like, this was a nothing case. This was so far below Nick's, pay grade at that point. But he was like, all right, it'll be fun to do it with this guy. So we met. You could not have two more different people. We were actually just talking about this yesterday. It's like Lethal Weapon. Like, he's Mel Gibson and I'm Danny Glover. Like, we're just very, very different. But when we come together, there's a really good magic that develops. So we won that case. Nick was like, I don't need any money from this case. You keep the fee, which at that time was like, more money than I had ever seen in one check.
Wow.
It obviously super generous. And just, that's kind of the way he is. So from there, I just, this was about 10, 11 years ago. All I knew how to do in personal injury was try cases. I didn't know how to file a complaint. I still don't know how to do discovery. Like, if I was in charge of that, nothing would ever get discovered, right? So I just knew how to do the end of the process really well. And then I kind of worked my learning curve back. So, okay, now I know how to handle experts. Now I know how to handle expert discovery. Now I know how to do this.
Which is the opposite of most people. Most people learn up to a trial, and then some people never even learn the trial part. But that's usually the last piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. So if you hire someone out of law school or, a third year lawyer or something, the first thing you're doing is going like, here's your computer, type up a complaint, like maybe talk to the client, get this discovery out right away, and just put that on repeat for about 2 years. I mean, I can't do that. I need to be moving around. I need to be, in court. And so my current practice really, I practice with my wife, Angela Bruno. Shout out to Angela. And it allows me to just kind of pick up cases around the country and jump in and try them. I'm currently in trial in downtown Los Angeles on a case where the injury was from 2016. And my first introduction to this case came on Sunday, so just a few days ago, and I jumped.
So you're in a trial right now.
I'm in a trial
right now.
Yes.
You are awesome, and thank you for taking the time to come on our show. So
absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And sorry, so go ahead. So tell us.
No, so I jumped in this trial 5 days ago and knew nothing about the case, but I can get up to speed very quickly. I'm very disciplined when it comes to, managing my time and knowing what I have to do, compartmentalizing. So Nick and I split up opening statement. I did liability, he did damages. We split up voir dire, and then I examined 3 witnesses, and we broke for the day. So that's the kind of like, and I was supposed to be skiing right now, which I'm not, which I'm a little bitter about. But not too bitter.
The sacrifices we make, right?
That's the life we chose. That's right.
That's the life we chose. Well, tell us. Okay, I read about this penis case out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. It was all over the news. It's you got a $412 $1 million verdict for some type of penis enhancement. Tell us about this.
Well, it did
And
not
how?
enhance his penis. And I think immediately after the case, I decided I did not want to hear the word penis for a long, long time. So now I'm back.
Oh!
I can do it now. I was very sick of penis.
Well, I'm glad we didn't do the show like right after, so you've had some time to recover from the penis trauma.
Right, I did. So basically, what happened to him? He was a lawyer. He is a lawyer. I'm sorry, and he had lost his wife. He had lost his son. He
Oh
was
my God.
65 years old, and he had a ton of comorbidities. He was obese. He had strokes. He had diabetes. Just every metabolic malady that you can think of, he had. Right. So he went to a doctor and he wanted testosterone because he was trying to lose weight and trying to like regain vitality. So and that's all he was seeking, right? He was only seeking
Like a testosterone supplement or something,
right, like injectable testosterone to try to boost his levels so he could get back into the gym and all this kind of stuff. So he ended up going to this company called New Male. And the thing you need to understand about New Male is these male wellness operations are almost entirely unregulated, right? There's not a board specialty like there is for anesthesiologists or neurosurgery or anything like that. So basically, all you have to do to be an expert in men's wellness is have an MD or a DO behind your name and call yourself that. So the main guy who was the main doc who was operating New Male, he was an emergency room doc, right? And while you make a lot of money as an emergency room doc relative to the rest of America, you're just kind of you're paycheck to paycheck. In other words, you get paid for your shift in the ER, and you don't get paid if you don't have a shift in the ER. And here you can, if you want to get out of that life and go into like the easy world of just popping up clinics, staffing them with nurse practitioners or PAs, and prescribing a shit ton of drugs to whoever walks through the door. Bam, you're just going to be making money hand over fist, and you're not stopping bleeding or pulling out bullets from people or resuscitating babies, doing that very, very difficult and noble hard work of an ER doc. You're basically a pill mill for men's boners. So what they did was they had this 3-part package that they would sell everybody. And the 3-part package was testosterone, it was platelet-rich plasma injections, and it was this Trimax injection that gets injected directly into your penis. And that's where the money was, right? That's where
What was
the
it?
margins.
What was in this? What was in this stuff they were injecting into all these dudes' penises?
Sure. So it's basically there's 3 separate chemical compounds that are then compounded to make one, and what it does is it and this is used diagnostically in normal urology settings. So it's not like it's not as though the medicine itself is to blame. The medicine itself has legitimate medical usages, right?
Is it approved for penis enhancement? Like, is it FDA approved or?
It is not approved for penis enhancement. There's nothing that enhances your penis. I'm sorry to report this. This is one of the things that I learned from being involved in this case, gentlemen. Your penis is exactly the way it is, and it's not going to change.
Yeah.
And all these people trying to sell you different things, to help your penis, just forget about it. And as it turns out, I think as it turns out, men care much more about how big their penis is and what it looks like than women do. I've read a bunch of studies now because I had to read up on all of this stuff. So what it does is you inject it directly into the penis, and it will produce an erection. and it works. Like it works every single time. Um,
Like it produces an erection instantaneously, or like it helps you with your erections like over a period of time.
no,
Like,
um, essentially instantaneously. So
okay.
you inject it, you will get a boner, and what will happen now? What happens from there is you're on the clock now. You've got about 2.5 to 3 hours with that boner to do whatever it is that you're going to do, and then it has to go down because if it doesn't, a condition called priapism happens, which is a medical emergency, and it's basically if you think about the penis, and God knows I have. What happens is all that blood that has flowed to that organ does not have a way of escaping, of going back into the body fast enough, so what happens is it basically congeals, and when it
Oh my
congeals,
god.
then scar tissue begins to form, and you basically the penis begins to necrotize from the inside out
Oh my
with
god.
this condition, and permanent damage, tissue damage begins at about 6 hours. Our guy was injected on a Friday at 3 o'clock, and he didn't get to the ER until the following Monday at about 10. So the die was cast for him. And this is a hugely painful condition. I mean, it's just wild that, he went back to New Mail. They were closed on a Saturday. There was no helpline or anything like that. They didn't give him any paperwork to say, here's what you do in the event that you have an erection for X amount of hours, right? And as an older gentleman, he's from New Mexico. Like he wasn't rushing around to show a random emergency room
Yeah.
doc his penis.
It's embarrassing. Like, hey, I went in to try to enhance my penis and now it won't go down. I have this perma boner.
Yes,
That's somewhat embarrassing, right?
it's incredibly embarrassing. And some people, when they're in an emergency, some people focus and others freeze. And he froze, for whatever reason, didn't know what to do. Didn't, he was so focused on New Mail as the only people that could help him. He was waiting outside of their office for it to open up at 8
Oh
a.m.
my god.
on the Monday because he had all of his kind of faith and trust in them. And of course, by that time, they tried to drain the penis. They stick like a 16 gauge needle into it, try to
Oh,
pull all the blood out. I mean, this is horribly painful. And when that didn't work, they sent him by himself in his car to the emergency room, which was 20 minutes away. And it was actually an emergency room urologist who alerted us to this. He's the one who called the medical board and said, I'm seeing these New Mail patients come in with priapism. Why do I have to be their aftercare plan? The emergency room is not an appropriate aftercare plan. Like if you're going to give this medicine to people and send them out into the world, you have to have a structure in place for patient care because we know what the dangers are. The dangers are priapism, and priapism is a medical emergency.
right.
It's just crazy, but they didn't have any of that, and the reason they didn't have any of that is because that would have been very expensive. And all these people were drug dealers. And I mean that sincerely and literally. You would go in, if it doesn't matter if it's you, John, if it's me, if it's our dad, if it's my 18-year-old son, okay? Anybody who went into that clinic was going to be evaluated, quote unquote. They were going to find by a physician's assistant or a nurse practitioner that, boy, you can really benefit medically from our, tripartite wellness model with the testosterone pellet injections, with the platelet-rich plasma, and with the penis injections. So everyone was going to benefit. Now from there, you pay about $5,000, maybe six, depending. You give that money to New Mail. Now, when you go see your doctor, and if your doctor said, John, your testosterone's low, I'm not saying it is, but if he said that, he would then prescribe you something, and you would go to the CVS, and you would pick up the medication, and you would pay CVS. That is a deliberate
Right.
buffer or separation of powers that is done deliberately and responsibly in this country. But what they would do is they would take your $5,000. Now they have a deal with a compounding pharmacy, and they get the group of drugs together for you. They pay the compounding pharmacy. Nobody knows exactly how much, but you can bet that they had a giant profit margin. And then they give you the drugs to self-administer at home. How is that any different than selling cocaine? Like, it's not. It's just you have a medical license to do that.
Wow, this is crazy. So, so what happened to the guy's penis, and then what happened at trial?
So after when he goes, he has emergency surgery on that Monday, and there's essentially nothing that they can do other than basically drain the blood from the penis, and there's just a ton of scar tissue. And they offered him at that time a prosthetic, and a prosthetic penis doesn't work like a prosthetic leg. Like a prosthetic leg works. You can walk, you can run. It does the thing that the leg did before. It has a functional part of it. A prosthetic penis does not work. You can't get any sexual excitement or pleasure or anything like that anymore. It's just basically an implant enough so that you could penetrate a vagina if you had to. But it doesn't help with the pleasure or anything like that. So he declined that. And we made a critical decision at trial that obviously I think helped us. Obviously, we had pictures of his penis. And the pictures I found to be horrific, right? What the penis looks like now, because there's so much scar tissue, it's shrunken. It's not good. But when we focus grouped it, what we found was that men had a very different reaction than women to seeing the picture. And women were kind of like, women's initial instinct was to say, I don't think he had a good penis to begin with. Now, I don't know how you discern that from these after pictures, but I mean, overwhelmingly, that was an attitude. And then there was an attitude of he's a widowed guy. He's 68. Like, why are we even involving ourselves with this guy's penis? That was also an attitude that showed up at jury selection. We got rid of those people. So we made a decision that we weren't going to show the photos to the jury. And before we made that decision, we were kind of, spitballing it. Nick and I, we rationalized that there's no dispute that his penis has been destroyed, right? So why not engage in theater of the mind, right? If someone says, John, this guy's penis was destroyed, you will conjure up an image of the worst thing that you could imagine it is in your mind. I will do the same. Our images might be very different, though. But to you, it's the worst thing that ever happened. And to me, it's the worst thing that happened. And on that, we agree. And when you introduce the photograph instead and you show people, it might not meet their expectations of what the worst thing that ever happened was. But if you just do theater of the mind, then it does. And we were concerned that the defense would catch wise and they would introduce it. But they never did. They didn't have the balls. And we kind of thought that they don't have the balls to fucking introduce this guy's penis all messed up and everything. And they didn't. So we ended up, obviously, with a $412 million verdict. With prejudgment interest, it'll be over $500,000. And it is as open a policy as there is. And just for anybody that doesn't do PI, an open policy is when essentially the insurance company is going to be on the hook for the total amount because they didn't take an offer at a reasonable time that was within the policy limits that would have protected their insured. They didn't do that at all. I mean, we in June of 2024, right before I got involved in the case, Nick's team went to mediation, and they made a settlement opportunity demand of the defendants at $960,000, and the defense said no. So once that,
What?
yes, yeah, yeah. So
What?
once that happened, the policy was about a $7 million policy. Oh, the combined policies, excuse me.
Yeah.
So once that happened, Nick was like, all right, we're going to try this. Fuck it. Bruno, you're on this case. I'm like, penis, Albuquerque, I've never been. I'm in. Let's do this.
It is all the thing.
Let's get the team together. Like the A team rolls
Oh
into
my
town.
gosh.
It gets worse. So then they, right before trial, maybe 2 weeks, now they know that, they know this trial's coming. They know real trial lawyers are going to show up, and, whether we're the best or the middleist or whatever, it's like, we're going to do this, guys. This is happening. So
Were defense attorneys good?
The defense attorneys were from very large firms, and they were defense attorneys
from very large firms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're credentialed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So right before they say, okay, 1.5, best and final. Now, this is kind of important when you're an insurance company, particularly one that is representing professionals, doctors, and companies, and they have and the doctors have okayed settlement, right? They have consented to settlement. If you tell me best and final, what you're saying is we will not negotiate any further. And if you're telling me this before trial, you're also admitting that as the facts come out and as the trial goes on and as you learn new information that might be really, really bad for your insured, you have drawn a line in the sand that you won't negotiate. That is classic bad faith. I mean, can you imagine if it's your attorney, your legal malpractice policy, and
Right.
You're sitting in a trial and they're like, the plaintiff has offered to settle for $960,000, which is within your policy. And then your lawyers go, all right, fine, 1.5 is our best and final offer. We're not negotiating after that. And you have paid for $7 million of insurance. You would be like, the fuck you're not negotiating.
Yeah,
Exactly. You're negotiating all the while. And you better do your damnedest to get this thing settled, because I'm about to be humiliated. I'm about to lose, Dr. Asandra is in the newspaper too, along with my name, except for he's the doctor who screwed up everything and was the greedy fraudster.
Yeah, Annie has like medical licensure issues potentially.
He sure does now. He sure does. And so the insurance company, by saying best and final before, which we rejected, they really solidified this bad faith case against them. That's number one. Then we give closing argument, and we had told them, look, you said you're not negotiating with us. We're not negotiating with you. We are here to try this case. We're not the type of lawyers that try it but are secretly hoping that we can settle. So
Yeah,
we can
right,
get a Porsche
right,
or anything
right.
like that. Fuck that. I'm here to do a job. I am mission focused and a blunt instrument. So they email us. They emailed Nick and I after closing argument. We were still in the courtroom. We're packing up and stuff.
Wait, and the lawyers are still in there and they email
They're still
you?
in there. They emailed us, we will tender the entire policy. So we had, which is, $7 million and
nothing to sneeze at.
right.
Nothing to sneeze at.
So we had, obviously when that happens, you must communicate any offer to your client. We did. God bless Michael Sanchez. He was like, no, the jury will decide. I was like, oh yeah, they will. Oh yeah, they will.
So
he
what
rejected
was
it.
the key? What was the key on damages? How did you get around look, it's a 70-year-old penis, so, it's not worth that much. And how did you get a $412 million verdict? I mean, I'm guessing there's not economics, or is there, did you waive economics? I mean, what was the strategy there?
So that's an excellent question. And of course, the way that the media picked up on it is correct that we won the largest medical malpractice verdict in United States history. Okay. But the real story is that the medical malpractice aspect of this was but an element of it. The real meat and potatoes here was fraud, was unfair business practices under New Mexico law. We had a civil conspiracy count. We won all of these counts, by the way. But that allowed us, to present and get punitive damages, which we got, right? B, it really, all of the challenges that I have and that every really excellent lawyer, every lawyer has on medical malpractice cases, all that goes away when you have fraud, right? Medical malpractice cases are really hard. People love doctors. In almost every state, the law is written in such a way the jury instructions are stacked against the plaintiff. I mean, you'll have they bring in tons of experts to say, no, this wasn't below the standard of care. This happens all the time. I do it myself.
Medical judgment.
Right. So those cases are super hard. And then if you get past the hurdles of negligence and causation in those cases, then they really scrutinize the damages, right? Okay, this gentleman lost a leg because of this. What are the damages? And the jury gets out their jeweler's loop and really goes over that with a fine-tooth comb. If the genesis of the wrongdoing is this massive fraud that is being perpetrated on desperate people, because if you show up at one of these clinics, frankly, what are you going through? You're going through you're sexually incapable. You can't get an erection. Typically you're
self-conscious.
Yes, you're down on yourself. You're depressed. I mean, so they know who their target audience is, and then they loop them into this thing by saying, basically, look, this is the panacea. This is the cure that you need. And if you hand us over $6,000, we'll give you a supply of these drugs that you can then go and use yourself, and you'll be a new male. Like you'll be back in the saddle, baby. And they had all of these like really cheesy and terrible advertisements. They had misleading advertisements. They had advertisements with just blatantly false medical claims. One of their advertisements was like, we would tell you what we do at New Mail, but we can't say it over the radio because Uncle Sam might be listening. Like, this was mind-blowing. They're like literally going like, we're going to commit crimes here, but we don't want to be explicit about our criming because somebody might find out that we're doing the crimes. It was that insane. I played all of these in open, and the jury...
Let me ask you.
Sure, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
The jury, because they weren't evaluating a strict medical malpractice case, they were evaluating a fraud case. They could look at Michael's non-economic damages, and they could go, you know what? Yeah, $65 million. Fuck you. $65 million for this guy's penis. If it was just a med mal case involving a good doctor where things went wrong, you would never get that. And then, of course, you wouldn't get punitive damages either, which we got on every single one of the New Mail. They had all these kinds of shell companies and shifting responsibility in different states, and we dinged each one of them for punitive damages, which is why the ratio of comparative to punitive is so big.
Were you able to bring in a pattern in practice because of the claims, like to show like that this was happening to other people?
We were, and we did. And the way that we were able to do that was our hero, this local Albuquerque emergency room urologist by the name of Stefan Guteau. Dr. Guteau, if you're out there, you're the man. He cared enough to notice what he had been seeing, where new male patients are coming into his ER, and he gets buzzed out of bed at 1:30 in the morning because that's when most priapisms are going to happen, and he's got to fix this problem. And it wasn't the first time that this happened, and so he was able to testify. We had competent testimony about his experience and what caused him to call the medical board when Michael Sanchez was like the last straw for him.
And
that's
he was
amazing. Pissed. Yes, and he came in and he fucking testified. like, you know, I mean, he was like the voice, because you got to understand, Albuquerque is not, it isn't Santa Fe, right? It is not a wealthy area of New Mexico. And the health care that New Mexicans get in Albuquerque is a problem. They don't get good health care. They don't attract, the best doctors and all of this stuff. So to have like a local doctor who really cared, and to have the new male doctors, Dr. Asandra lived in Beverly Hills. He had a clinic in
No
Beverly
way.
Hills. I went through his Instagram and I found out he was posting, all during this time period that my client was losing his penis and was going through it. Never a single post about Albuquerque. It was all about Beverly Hills and Las Vegas and New York,
And he could probably bill more in Beverly Hills.
Exactly.
Too,
He can. And so
that's crazy.
yeah, so they plant their pill mill down in Albuquerque, and they are taking advantage of New Mexicans in Albuquerque, because why not? Fuck them. They're poor.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to care. They want the drugs. We'll give them the drugs. It was very reminiscent to me, as someone who lived the second part of my life in Pennsylvania. It was very reminiscent to me of what the Sackler family did with OxyContin, and just flooding the zone with this stuff because it was profitable.
That's amazing, dude. I mean, what a great story. What a great case. What ended with, is it over? Are you guys pursuing bad faith? Is it on appeal? What's going on right now?
Sure. We have a mutually agreed upon stay of all post-trial deadlines, and we are having discussions with Lloyd's of London.
All right. Fucking Lloyd's of London. God, always Lloyd's of London. I read this thing the other day about Lloyd's of London, and I didn't realize this, but you probably know this, that Lloyd's of London is not like a traditional insurance company, who I hate traditional insurance companies, but it's a bunch of like investors.
Yes.
Who they like, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't fully understand. Yeah, like these hedge funds that like get together and bid on this exchange, and then they roll it into a policy of some sort. It's so insane to me. But
it is. And it's done that way deliberately. I mean, I don't want to get off on a rant here, but I'm in Orange County, which to people nationwide is the county next to Los Angeles. So LA, where all these fires have been going on, in the mid parts of January. Now we're seeing all the insurance nonsense and people in serious coverage trouble. The more you learn about insurance companies, the more you will hate them. I think that's a universal human trait.
Yeah, absolutely. I just tried a case with Samantha, who's I know helping you on your trial. She's awesome.
Yes.
Against Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Michigan, and I was a little worried because I thought maybe health insurance would be treated differently, than a property casualty insurance, but there was still a lot of hate. And as we saw, that this was before the whole Luigi thing in New York.
I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, that was before that. So it's universal. It's pretty universal. So, but okay, tell us about, we have time for probably one more case, because was so interesting. And you got a $857 million verdict against Monsanto for chemical poisoning of little kids and others in Washington. Can you tell us about this? This is a crazy, crazy case, Keith. This is crazy.
Sure. So we had 3 family groups, mother and 2 daughters, another mother and 2 daughters, and then another plaintiff was just kind of solo. And so these cases stem from a chemical called PCBs, which have been banned worldwide. They're banned in North Korea. I mean, this is the one thing that the United States and North Korea can agree upon, that these things are dangerous. And they have been banned since the 70s. But if you went to school, if you went to Seaholm High School, or where I went, Radnor High School, any school that was built in the post-war boom, post-World War II boom, where, American families were having kids left and right, and these kids had to go to school, and we had to build schools. The chances are that that school has PCBs, this chemical called PCBs in them.
So what is it? Just basically, in simple terms.
Polychlorinated biphenyls, in simple terms.
Well, simple terms, not complicated.
In simple terms,
yeah.
it's a oil that was used to basically encapsulate lights and other things, because it was believed incorrectly at the time that it had these amazing flame retardant properties, right? So it can't catch on fire. Now, it doesn't do that any better than multiple other chemicals and properties out there. But it was ubiquitous.
All those miracle. This was the time of miracle chemicals.
Yeah, DDT,
asbestos, DDT. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
It's.
I mean, they used to run ads like "Your chemical company working for you to make life more modern and enjoyable." Put this plastic thing in the oven and just heat it all up and then eat it, and nothing bad will happen.
Yeah.
So it was that time in America, but what happens is because PCBs were essentially inside of some mechanical device like light ballasts or other things.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about the life of anything mechanical, there's a fail date, right? There's never been a mechanical device or object that has lasted ad infinitum, right? So everything has a fail date, and if you're manufacturing and installing things like light ballasts at the same time, of course you're going to have a bit of a bell curve, but most mechanical failures are all going to occur within the same time period, because all mechanical devices have the same life cycle. Now, of course, some will fail earlier and some will fail later, but you get the point. So what happens is if you went to this school in 1995 or 1991, there were still PCBs in the school, but you're probably fine because they weren't leaking out. They weren't then being exposed. But if you went from 2011 to 2016, now you're in this group where the mechanical failures were occurring at the rate that one would expect them to occur. So significant mechanical failures, and the ballasts are failing, and now the PCBs are leaking out into the bodies of the children and the parents. And the reason why it was children and parents is because this was a special school where the parents it was a homeschool hybrid. So the parents had, and it was almost always the moms, had an obligation to be in the school and teaching and helping for, it was like 60% of the week, right? So just because of the way that they were structured, you have this perfect storm of mothers and children that are getting hurt by these PCBs that are leaching into the environment. And
now, is it like, sorry,
sure.
Keith, is it like dripping out, or is it like smoking out, or is it like a dust, like asbestos dust, or like what is it?
All the above except for dust. So it's leaking and it's going into the air in the form of a gas. If you have a significant mechanical failure where like something breaks, then it can be in the form of a liquid. And because these are forever chemicals, if a ballast breaks and PCBs land on the floor, on the carpet, and everybody, nobody knows anything about this. The janitor isn't a PCB expert,
right.
So they clean it up. And guess what? Now those PCBs are in the carpet and they're being moved around every day. You're tracking them. They're expanding in the universe. And remember,
oh my God,
PCBs couldn't burn, right? They were essentially an indestructible chemical, which was their use. So
like this Teflon. This is
right.
Like, sounds like this Teflon.
So you can't get rid of it.
Everybody.
Yeah. And it's just spreading all over. And it was also in the caulk, joint compound caulk of the school. And so you're basically, what happened is almost like Aaron Brockovich style. Moms and other people and teachers were noticing like, we've got all kinds of like massive sicknesses. and we're missing days all over, like way more than the normal population.
What kind of sickness was this due to people?
So this is one of the insidious things about PCBs is it. I'm not aware of a single system in the body that it won't affect, right? So it affects the endocrine system. It can cause cancer. It affects. It is a neurotoxin. So it affects your brain. It affects your nervous system. I mean, everything. We have girls, reaching puberty at 6 and 7 years old.
Oh
Boys
my
too.
God.
We have people's skin peeling off. Everybody has chronic toxic encephalopathy because it really affects the brain. It can penetrate the blood-brain barrier, and so it's just a terrible chemical. And because the manifestation of the illness is different, right? It's one thing if all of a sudden everybody starts getting leukemia that lives in
Right.
this, certain area, then you go, aha, the power lines or whatever, we can identify why this cancer cluster is occurring. If everybody starts getting different symptomology, but the community is sick, that's much more difficult to identify and prosecute, but it doesn't make it any less real. It is absolutely real. And when you look at the amount of people and you look at what their illnesses are, Hashimoto's disease, all kinds of endocrine disorders, all kinds of neurological disorders, cancers. When you look at that and you go, oh my God, like there has to be some common denominator. And the common denominator is always the school. And it's always the people in this period of time that went there from one period to the next.
So these chemical cases are always hard to prove causation. So tell us what happened at the trial and how you were able to uh, win such a monumental verdict in this case.
Sure. I mean, it starts with that we have significantly good experts that have devoted their life to studying this chemical, and they're doing it, kind of in the way that Dr. Omalu discovered and studied chronic traumatic encephalopathy, in the way that many scientists fought tobacco for years. Like Monsanto, who created this chemical and studied this chemical and then took the chemical off the market, permanently in the 1970s by government order. This extraordinarily powerful company in American history has a vested interest in making sure that that this thing can't be studied, that the people who study it are discredited. So they're really doing work on a daily basis against the medical establishment. I mean, it's revolting how many medical doctors from Stanford and Harvard and Yale and MIT are just lining up to take Monsanto's money and will say just about any amount of bullshit, like PCBs, neurotoxin, never heard of it. Nope. I couldn't find any in the literature. We hear this over and over. So how we did it was we had excellent experts. And then the law in Washington is that it has to be a cause, right? It doesn't have to be the sole cause. And so we prove it essentially by Euclidean logic, which is here's what this does, here's what these people have, here are the symptoms that they have, here's their testimony about that, and oh, by the way, this is what PCBs do to humans, right? And then you get an expert to opine that yes, it's more likely than not that this came from PCBs because it didn't come from mold and it didn't come from carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. It didn't come from, drinking alcohol or anything like that.
Right.
Like we have adults and we have children and they're all experiencing, similar symptoms, and it was all mostly acute when they were in Sky Valley, when they were at the school. So people need to remember too, lawyers that are taking on difficult causation cases. The tobacco industry, they used to have these guys in white coats, and they'd go to Congress, and they worked for like, sir, where, I went to Harvard, I went to Yale Medical. Where do you work now? I work at the Institute for Tobacco Studies, and they just hadn't been able to find that link between cancer and cigarettes. And boy, they looked hard, but they just couldn't find it. And the reason you can't is because it's almost impossible to prove perfect causation, right? Because you have outliers, you have people that didn't get cancer, and you can't set up an experiment where you give this portion of the population cigarettes and you don't give this portion of the population cigarettes and then see who gets cancer at a higher rate. That's totally unethical.
Right.
So Monsanto knows this, and so do their doctors. So they play this game like, well, we've never seen evidence that giving that PCB exposure in humans is going to cause X, Y, and Z. Because the only way to establish that would be to give a control group PCBs, make sure another group was not exposed to PCBs, do a longitudinal study, and see whose skin falls off first.
Right.
But that's not ethical, and you can't do that. And so they go, we haven't seen these studies, so there is no scientific proof, which is a lot of what tobacco did for years and years and years.
So how hard did, I'm guessing Monsanto fought pretty damn hard on this, and knowing that that one case or one verdict against them probably won't just affect the school, but could have national implications if this stuff was used on a nationwide scale and is now poisoning people across the country. How hard did they fight it? I mean, I'm guessing there was tens of thousands of documents, hundreds of thousands of documents, probably millions maybe. And how did that work? And did you find, like, I just watched, God, what was that show? It was on Netflix. It was about the Teflon, and how Teflon was, they were dumping the chemical in the river, and then it slowly poisoned. It started with poisoning the cows, and then it started to poison the people. And, they found some of these like very important documents that like the needle in the haystack documents. Did you guys have any of those?
Absolutely.
And yeah,
we had a memo. There's a memo that says essentially, we don't want to tell the world about PCBs because they're in schools. They're the ticking time bomb in schools. And we don't need mothers thinking that a cancer-causing agent is just sitting right above Junior's head. I mean, they're writing shit like this. This is back in,
oh my God,
in the day where, people probably had like 3 martini lunches and wrote, dumb memos like this. But we've got a hold of them, and I have a strong suspicion that we don't have the half of the memos. I think some mysteriously have disappeared, I'm sure. Right. But to answer the general question of did they fight this hard? So like I went to University of Maryland and USD Law School. I didn't go to Harvard or Yale, and I didn't clerk at the Supreme Court or anything like that. And going into the case, I'd be lying if I said there isn't like a little bit of an intimidation factor, which when every single lawyer on their team was like editor of the law review and blah, blah, blah. And, of course they belong to country clubs and Justice Kennedy and or Justice Scalia. And, you're like, okay, fine. I didn't clerk anywhere. I was a bartender throughout law school, for God's sakes. And so you're intimidated by them and by just this mass of power, because they amass multiple firms, like the largest law firms in the country. They'll take 3 of them and make them all work on one case together.
It's crazy.
And that's, it can be intimidating. And I'll give you like one example. We're just kind of like finishing up with a witness, and there's a break, and we're about to probably get another witness on, but that's going to take 10 minutes or something. And so the judge just says like, hey, and I happen to be up at the podium at that time. He's like, I just want to get your thoughts on, jury instruction number 675 while we have time. Right. And I'm like, okay. And so all of a sudden, like from the back, a one of the army of lawyers comes up, and she's like, "I'm here to discuss jury instructions." I had never seen her before. I'm like, "Where did you come from?" She's there. She just sits there and deals with jury instructions. That's her issue. And unfortunately, she knows everything about jury instructions and the law and, why this instruction and that. And she's objecting to everything. And I'm just going like, yeah, Judge, looks good to me. All right, we're good to go.
Yeah.
But if you can think of a niche part of a trial, they have a specifically assigned, 50-year-old lawyer from Harvard that is doing just that one small piece of the trial. And they've got an endless supply of these people.
So that is frustrating, and I've dealt with that. I don't think on the scale that you just described, but I've dealt with it here in Michigan. I've the last case I did by Blue Cross Blue Shield, they had probably 15 lawyers on the case, and it can be a disadvantage, especially when you get papered and on those niche things, but I can find it can also be a disadvantage because sometimes there's too many body parts, and it's too many cooks in the kitchen. Did you have any of that, or and how did these people who may be very well qualified to write on law review, but did that translate to being able to be an effective trial lawyer and talk to just normal people about stuff?
So how do you know that someone went to Harvard, does CrossFit, or is a vegan? Because they'll tell you in the first 6 seconds. Okay. That's what those people do. Like, I went to Harvard. It doesn't confer an advantage. And I'll tell you what, and this is not just in this case, this is in every case I've done. They will kick the shit out of you in motions in limine and in all of the pretrial motions that they file, the summary judgment. If you survive that, the minute that jury walks in, they lose all their power. They lose all their strength. It just drains right out from under them. And they do not know what to do with real human beings. And they definitely don't know how to try a case against someone like me, who's generally plain spoken. I'm direct. I don't give a shit about what they do. You want to use 3,500 exhibits in your opening? Go ahead. Do you want to see them? No, I don't want to see them. I don't care. I don't care what you're going to do. I'm going to beat you. And the more you do, the more I will beat you over the head with this. And I know this.
Yeah.
So it's like, as long as, if we can just survive, it's like an endurance fighter. If we can just get to the 4th round, right, or the 5th round, we will dominate the later rounds, right? If we can just get to that part where now the jury's coming in, now we're going to talk to these normal people about PCBs or about poisoning someone's penis or about, getting into a wreck where the truck driver wasn't paying any attention and mashed into a mother, ruining her, the rest of her expected life. Then it's just, people want to know about those cases. They don't want to know about the study that says that, there's no conclusive evidence linking PCBs to cancer. They don't care about that. And they know intuitively, especially when there's some executive from the 60s writing, "We don't want moms to freak out because cancer bubbles are sitting over Junior's head." They know there's fucking cancer in there now. Right?
Yeah. Oh my God. I call it the rope-a-dope. You ever hear about rope-a-dope?
Yeah, absolutely. Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, Muhammad Ali.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be up there. It looks like he's getting his ass kicked. His opponent's just swinging, hitting him left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And then later rounds, they're worn out. He goes to work.
Yes.
And then the real fight starts.
That's right. Right.
So
just survive.
Just survive. So obviously a great result. I mean, what did the jury say? You got, what was the total verdict? $857 million. Was that just for one family or one person? Or
no, it was for 7 people. So each one had, an individual verdict, compensatory, individual punitives, and the 857 was the total.
And what did the jury say? Well, did you get a chance to talk to him or no?
We had people that went and talked to them, and they're concerned. They live in Seattle. This school is
Yeah.
in Seattle. Like, this is a problem, and frankly, they're pissed. Obviously, as is demonstrated by the punitive damages verdict, that I don't think they're pissed about the mistake, right? Like, nobody believes that Monsanto went in, like, crafted PCBs to injure and
Yeah.
alter the lives of Americans. Like, they probably had the best of intentions. Let's create this flame retardant thing so we can put it on submarines or put it in schools and put it in all this stuff. Yes, it's the behavior once they knew it was toxic and problematic
The
that
cover up.
it's the cover up, and the cover up is still on display. These trials, the lawyers that Monsanto is hiring are still to this day trying to cover up and minimize Monsanto's responsibility. And I think when you get the jury to see that this isn't just something that this isn't about memos drafted in the 70s, this is about what's happening right now in front of your eyes. You want to know why people don't get justice. You want to know why chemical companies keep making terrible chemicals and then throwing them down, downstream of an elementary school. It's because there is an industry of apologists and an industry of protectors, namely corporate lawyers in this country, that view the victims of their products as, oh, these greedy people that just want money. They're killing the country. Monsanto is a bedrock company along with GE that made this country what it is, and how dare they basically complain about their skin and stuff like that. And that is the attitude.
Here's my question. How many other schools, daycares, buildings have this stuff in it?
Millions. And that's the other thing. If Monsanto had been, you can remediate this stuff. You can remove, which happened at Sky Valley. You can remove all the light ballasts, right? You take out the thing that has PCBs in them. You can remove the caulk, just like you can remediate with asbestos, right? So this is a problem that is somewhat fixable. But in order for it to be fixable, there has to be an acknowledgement that it's dangerous. Right. They're not doing that. That it's ubiquitous. They're not doing that. And why do you suppose that is? Well, because someone has to pay for it. And that's all. Yeah. That's all it is.
How was this exposed in the first place in this particular case? Like, how is it that did they get together and say, like, something's not right here? Or,
yeah, they had a meeting in a pizza parlor wow. And Facebook. So it started as a Facebook group of saying, like, weird illnesses, Sky Valley from X and such. And then once it got so much, so many people were like, hey, my daughter too, because that's the other thing. When it's not just like the leukemia clusters, people suffer in silence, and they think it's only, they think their child is just sickly. Because, if you have children, I have 4 of them, I don't know what anyone else's attendance is like at school. I just know what mine is. Right. So it would be important information if I knew that, half of San Juan Hills High School was way above the national average in terms of sick days, because, these people are having, these weird phenomena. Like, I would look into it. And so that's basically what they did. And when they met, they compared notes. And then there was an Epiline study done, which interviewed people and cataloged all of their complaints. And it's stunning when you look at it from that bird's eye view. It's like, oh my God, there's a real problem here.
Wow. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I'm getting my management team is giving me the good old, you're out of time.
God bless them. I could talk forever.
Yeah,
as you can tell.
Know, me too. And this is so interesting. You got a trial to go back to.
I do.
I gotta. Well, let me ask one more question. How many more cases are pending against Monsanto as it relates to this right now?
I think we have 2 more. Mine and then another one.
Wow. And how many people? How many more trials are there going to be?
I think there's only going to be 2. So this next one, Teresa Bone Hatch, my partner who did the last one with me, are going to do this with Rick Friedman and Tom Vertitas and
Oh my God.
Colleen Durkin Peterson. So we've got a really good team on this one. And then, when is it going to be the last one? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's largely up to the Supreme Court, and it's largely up to Monsanto.
Yeah.
We'll just keep kicking their ass until
keep
then.
kicking their ass, please, and make it safer for everyone, because these chemical cases always scare the shit out of me because you just don't know. And, God forbid, I have 3 kids and 1 on the way, and I don't want them to get poisoned. I threw out all the I watched that Netflix thing. I threw out all of the Teflon pans, every single fucking pan.
We have too. We don't cook in plastic. We don't use plastic cutting boards. Like these basic things that if you think about it, like, yeah, we really shouldn't. Like, it's not you're not a weirdo, or it's not controversial to do those things. We should have never been doing them in the first place.
I know. It's just so scary. It's everywhere. All right. Well, look, dude, thanks a lot.
I hope to
this
see.
Was
I want to say I really the response for the Michigan Trial Lawyers Summit has been great so far. I want to see, like, everybody in the Midwest should definitely be there. And if you're on the East, it's a cheap plane flight. You're going to have massive trial lawyers that are coming. So go to mtlsummit.com, register, and it will be epic. It'll be as good as TLU in Vegas. It's going to be awesome.
Better, but way better than TLU in
way
Vegas.
Better.
Come on. Sorry, Dan Ambrose, but way better. But
TLU Vegas was awesome this year. It was fantastic. But
I know, but you got to aspire to achieve greatness.
Set the bar high.
Set the bar high. Well, we're excited to have you. We're excited to hear you talk because you're coming. You're a good friend. You're a great lawyer, and I can't wait to see you and host you here in the Motor City. I'm going to make sure we get you a PCB-free room. Thanks again.
I'm going to get to go
Keith.
back and see my childhood house, so I'm excited.
Michigan is going to have open arms for you.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Right, it's always a pleasure. I love talking to you.
You too, brother. All right, everyone, it's been another awesome episode of Cases Gone Wild. Special thanks to Keith Bruno. He's a great human being and a great lawyer, and it was just such an interesting and awesome show today. Please check us out, 833 Marko Law, if you or someone you know needs help, or go to our website, markolaw.com, markolaw.com, and you can click on our podcast. You can check Keith Bruno out. That's Bruno. Check him out on the web. Do you have an Instagram, Keith, or something else you want to throw out there?
It's Bruno in Trial.
Bruno in Trial. Check him out. He's a total G. All right, everyone. We'll see you in another 2 weeks on another awesome episode of Cases Gone Wild.